Hey friends, Peter Bowden here. I received an email recently from a clergy colleague just sharing some of the struggles of doing ministry online right now. Things not working, people feeling zoomed out, worship attendance down, communication from some people suggesting that they're not feeling like what's being offered is real church, and just a number of things related to the challenges of doing ministry online. And I want to share this with you, just some of the principles, mindsets, and approaches that I think are really important as we experiment, navigate these times. The question to me is kind of like, what would you do to increase worship attendance, to build more enthusiasm, excitement, and on and on. So here are seven different things that I think we really need to be striving for. Okay. And if you're not familiar with my work, I'm a congregational consultant. I've been also a television and media producer for the last 20 years. And so really digital ministry and helping us bring our work and leadership online is at the heart of what I'm doing today. And just over the years, membership development, small group spiritual exploration has been a big part of the programming I've supported as a trainer and coach. And so for me, at the heart of what I'm trying to do is help you connect with people in a way that's going to bring them into relationship with your congregation, into community with other people, and that you're leading them through spiritual exploration, a process that really helps transform their lives. And together, all of you can bring your values more fully into the world. So number one, vision casting. You as a leader need to treat vision casting, which includes storytelling, continually sharing what your congregation is about, what your mission is, what your values are, what the world is like that you want to create, from immediate things to supporting people in your local community, in your congregation. That vision and your excitement and the passion with which you and other leaders share it, I want you to think about that as the magnetic field that's holding or like keeping people connected to what you're doing. If you have kind of like I'm wearing headphones today because I want to record this and share it via podcast. So if you're not subscribed to the podcast, go to your podcast app and search for Peter Bowden and subscribe. All right. So if you're not intentionally working vision casting continually into what you're doing in a way that really helps people understand why your congregation exists, what your mission is, and what it looks like in terms of specific vision right now, this month, next month, this year, if that's weak, everything's going to just be mediocre. You're toast, all right? You've got to ramp up that vision casting. It's got to be exciting, compelling. And, that's all the stuff we had to do previously offline. But in terms of people's attention, our energy goes where our attention is. And if you're not sharing a compelling vision that's really speaking to people's hearts and the lives and world they want, without that vision, where are they going? Netflix, all these other streaming platforms, or another organization that is sharing a more compelling vision. Number two, this is critical, especially for all my clergy colleagues. You need to be leading from a place where it's like, this is we. What are we, the congregation, doing? A collaborative, non-hierarchical approach. Now, regardless of your leadership structure, policy, governance, it doesn't matter what your structure is, your staff structure, your policies, what the bylaws say. For the people in your congregation, they need to feel from you as a leader and all the other leaders that we are in this together. It's what are we doing? Is what we're doing working for us? So I just want you to imagine you are leading a congregation, say, whether it's 50 people, 100, 500, 2,000. I want you to imagine, if you're a minister or other leader, that you're leading a group of people, a community of people that are your equals. And if you're a minister, Imagine, like, what would happen if you were asked to lead a community of 500 ministers? Maybe they retired, some of them changed their jobs, some lost their jobs, but they all have equal interest in spirituality, personal development, justice work, all these things. But you have more training and they want you to lead them. Or maybe you just are someone you've dedicated your life to leading communities of other ministers. If you look at the larger church world, the whole notion of the priesthood of all believers, everyone's a minister. You have to, regardless of your faith tradition, and I work with people from different faith traditions, you need to make sure in this time that your approach is treating people with respect, and that they feel, however you're leading, that you're equals. And just the us versus them mentality and approach, I think, is very damaging right now, because as I hear people, I'm talking to clergy, and they're saying, like, I feel like, I'm doing everything I can for them, and I don't even know if they are watching. And there's all this language that's us versus them. It's not necessarily a competition, but it's like, I'm the one who is offering the content and they're listening, or whatever you're doing right now. You just got to look at it from, is this more of like am I doing something for these people, or am I leading a community of people, and together we are making sure that whatever we're doing is working for everyone. That is, it's working towards our vision. We're really meeting people's needs. We're being of service in the way that our mission calls us to be. So just make sure I can't say, you've got to get to this perceived feeling of we as fast as you can. I'm telling you, like, you got to get to we, where everyone's like, we have just like our vision, they feel it, their place in the congregation, they know it, what all of you together are called to do, how you're responding to each other's needs and the community's needs. People feel it. And it's like, we are doing so much good. Or it's it's not working. This isn't working for us. We have to figure out, your congregation, how to make more of these kinds of connections happen. Or we have to figure out how to, our children are suffering. They're not getting this. We need more fun. We need more fellowship. But it's we. So look at your communication and like the sense of what's happening with your people. And if you don't have this very clear sense of like this, like, the we is resonating, like, if it's not present, you got to get there. All right. And I'll tell you, I mentioned this to some people this last week, the whole notion of like, how are you doing in terms of like the sense of like, how are we as a congregation doing versus you being of service or trying to be of service or trying to make contact that is helpful for them wherever they are. And 100% of the people I've talked to are like, ooh, yeah, we're kind of falling to this. We're creating content for them. And so got to get to we. All right. Number 3, you are leading, I think you need to think of it this way, a tribe that right now is connected online, but that functionally is a network of small groups. A lot of you have great small group programming. I've had great small groups before COVID. Some of you, it's mediocre. I tell you, I'm confident, this kind of prediction, but those of you who look at what you're doing and think of the structure, the system, the process, the way you're doing ministry as like, all right, our congregation is this tribe of people that's really functionally a network of small groups. If people are in a small group and participating in what we do within our small groups, that process, then they are within the congregation, within the community, they're part of the we. If you're not in a small group, you're not part of the we. And we have to deliver on friends right now. We have to deliver on regular conversation. We have to have strong pastoral care networks, being able to support people, which means we need to know what's happening in people's lives. And I tell you, the best way to do that, I think, is having a network where the people in your congregation are in small groups and you have trained facilitators leading those small groups, facilitating those small groups with a process that's agreed upon, so that you're meeting with facilitators and they're like, as things come up within the different small groups, your facilitators are able to say, hey, we want to be able to help you in this situation. Can I share with this group that you're struggling with that? Or maybe you want to speak with Reverend so-and-so about that. Can I connect the two of you? You are, through your small group network, responding to people's needs in the midst of all that we're dealing with right now. So have to deliver on deep connections, friends, and as we're dealing with the pandemic, opening, closing, hybrid, this, that, small groups are the thing, which if we look at congregational life, growing congregations just throughout the years in literature and my wall of church geeky books, in my own experience, thriving congregations have amazing small groups that deliver connection, community, intimacy while being tied to the mission and vision of the congregation, and can accomplish a certain amount of pastoral care through the small groups, or connect people with the pastoral system, a pastoral care system of the congregation. So I was going to say, as we're dealing with all of these COVID-19 issues, it's the small groups that are the thing, like Zoom small groups or whatever your platform you use, video communication wise. It is the small group meeting online, which is the closest thing that we can replicate to the valuable experience at the heart of our pre-COVID ministry. And as we move toward, and I keep saying this, and some of you may get tired, and I'll tell you, probably tired of me saying this, if you haven't implemented your small group approach. Those of you who are actually doing it, everything I'm hearing says it's working well. So small groups can be meeting online, and you can have people in their groups now. And as you're able to, people can meet in homes, parks, other places, per public health measures, of course. I don't want to recommend you do anything that doesn't follow your local public health guidelines. But so we can use small groups to be very, connect people, deeply engage people in the life of your congregation, your vision, what you're working on. And those groups help us be really responsive, because we actually know what we can talk to people about, what's working, what's not, get feedback. So I think that's critical. And again, being able to meet online, offline as we're able to. So your ministry, if it's organized as small groups, like the heart of your ministry, doing spiritual exploration, whatever your process is theologically, whatever your specific learning and faith development objectives are, you're doing that through small groups primarily, with everything else supporting that, your worship services, etc. You can have that process continue 100% online, offline, group by group. It could vary. Oh, that group wants to go and hike up a mountain and sit in a field and have conversation in their little portable chairs. Fine, with their masks, whatever they do it, they could do that, maybe. So we just can be a little more flexible. I think that's critical. Number 4, process. I think you really need to have a very clear process right now, in terms of what your ministry looks like and how you're going to do it online, such that it's easy to get people involved and you can communicate what that process looks like. You can build in more interaction, feedback. You can communicate with people in this whole notion of we, what are we doing? I think I'll tell you a story about when I led a youth group years ago. This gets to process. So I started off when I was in my early 20s being an assistant advisor in a youth group, had 8 teens. And very, very soon after I started doing that, the primary leaders left that group. And so I inherited this little youth group. And I grew up attending a great youth group. And so I was, all of a sudden it's like, ooh, I'm going to lead a youth group the way I want youth group to be. And the thing that I'm passionate about is having awesome spiritually oriented conversations, looking at big cosmic questions, life issues, justice issues, but to really tackle like what's life about? What's the universe about? What's our place in it? What does it mean to be a good person? All these things, have those conversations with others. So what I would do is every year I would start, and I ended up advising the youth group for 10 years roughly. And it grew to be about 65 teens by the time I left. That's because I went and started doing work for my denomination's headquarters, and so I kind of phased out. But we had this thriving youth ministry. What I would do is start the year off leading a brainstorming session where we would I'd lay out, like, this is the scope of the kind of conversations that we can have here. Like, we're not just talking about random stuff, but it's like spiritual issues, religious, ethical, moral issues, life issues, kind of like map out what's fair game. And then we'd brainstorm and have people write on index cards while we crank some music and had snacks, all the different things that they're excited about doing. And, it's at first, it's like, ooh, it's a little hard for them to figure out, like, what kind of things are we talking about? So we'd brainstorm for 5 minutes. I'd collect cards and I'd share some of the cards, and I'd include some of the ones that I had written, and they couldn't tell which I wrote and which the other people had written, the teens, kind of like priming the system. And it's like, oh, and people are like, oh yeah, that's cool. All right. And so then we do another cycle, and we had big cork board, like a whole wall that was made out of kind of cork board material. Started tacking them up, and then just like over an hour went through like 5 or 6 different cycles. And then we had all these different cards. And again, we do this every year. And we would then organize the cards based on like which ones relate. Like, oh, is there life after death? Are ghosts real? Connected to, is there a heaven and a hell? And something about evil. And it's like this whole like almost like mind map of spiritual, religious, ethical, life issues, questions. Oh, it was awesome. I call them deep and profound Mongo cosmic questions. But so what would happen is I'd have this awesome experience of brainstorming. They got all excited. And then you know what I'd do? I would take that stack of cards, an inch thick. And every week I'd be like, all right, now next week, anyone who wants to talk to me, hang out at the end of our session and discuss what makes sense for us to explore next time. Like we're just going to meet for 5 minutes before everyone goes to coffee hour. And so usually like a couple of people would linger, plus my co-advisors. We always had multiple advisors present. And we kind of map out what's next. It was like this emergent curriculum. So all the teens fully bought into every single thing. First I should say, when we had our big wall of the different cards, I then gave people sticker dots, and they would, I say, all right, everybody put five dots on different things, your like the top questions that you want to explore, or issues, topics. So then we'd kind of prioritize with sticker dots. And of course, like they influence each other, but that's fine in terms of like what's interesting. Oh, this one has the most dots. Do I care about that? And so we'd have the stack of cards prioritized with sticker dots. And I will tell you how this relates to your congregation today. Don't worry, I'll get there. But what happened is I'd ask, we had this emergent curriculum based, and this is their understanding, 100% on the issues that they and their peers cared about. I would invite them to help me figure out where we go next. And some would do it, but I'll whisper this. A lot of times, none of the teens stayed, and I'd end up making the decision. So next week, we'd say like, all right, I'd all start, last week we did this, a little recap, ask others in the group to share any other highlights that they thought people in the group that day needed to know, so we could kind of pick up. Every session kind of stood alone, but we always had little threads continuing, kind of an emergent curriculum. And the funny thing is, people always laugh when I tell them this. So I would take this stack of index cards, figure out which card or set of cards we were talking about next, and I would go outside of our session time, youth group time. I go to my religious education director's office, sit down with her and be like, all right, what do you have in terms of curricula, books, etc. on this topic? And we'd take a few minutes and we'd pull exercises, activities, etc. from different resources. And then I would kind of put them together. I never would bring curricula binders into the group. I'd always just transcribe it onto paper using Sharpie. And so it looked like, just like as far as our group was concerned, every single thing we were doing was based on their interest, their ideas, their energy. And there was this very palpable sense of what are we exploring? And my job as the lead advisor was to help facilitate that. And I'll tell you, the thing that really made things start just to hum, like the energy in the group and the growth came when I started, after doing this for a number of years, started training the youth intentionally to facilitate the group, small groups themselves. Like, how do you ask great questions? How do you make sure everybody gets a chance to hear? And my goals and objectives for the group, I started talking about intentionally within the group. So it was totally transparent. Everyone in the group knew that I was doing leadership development of the teens in the group to get them to the point where everyone in the group, especially those interested, could lead and facilitate a small group, because now we had a network of small groups in our youth group. We had so many teens, we'd have to break into small groups and kind of go throughout the congregation just to be able to sit in small groups and have these conversations. So like basically it comes down to every single thing we did in youth group came down to whatever the heck Peter, wanted to talk about next. Not a huge amount of input from the teens. But the way I led gave them the sense that Peter is 100% interested in what we care about. He's invited us to offer ideas and feedback. He's asked continually, like, anyone want to help me figure this out for next time? And so the process, one, it was like this ongoing emergent curriculum. We're not planning too far out enough so that I could figure out what to do next. And again, this was just a discussion group, not a whole worship service. It's based on the foundational small group ministry model used within my home denomination. And actually, it's my youth group model, which led me to want to start the UU Small Group Ministry Network and popularize that model. But now, how does this relate to your congregation? By having this process of we're meeting in small groups, we're going through these, we're exploring these various issues, we're talking to each other, we're feeding back. This process of exploring through small groups, having that tie in with, I think, your worship service themes, and developing a process where you're inviting people to share feedback on what you're doing, helping to identify topics, and you can create a system where you're offering worship services, you're leading small groups, there's justice efforts that are happening, but that people feel like there's a real established process. We do this and that, and we have the opportunity to share our ideas and input. Our leadership, Reverend so-and-so and others, are asking for ideas. There's and there are ways for us to share, submit content or submit ideas, or real feedback mechanisms. If you can develop a process that really serves people and feels collaborative, is true to your vision and mission, and you've got this like exciting vision and you're transforming people's lives, I think people are going to show up for that online and offline. And that gets to number 5, feedback systems. You need to have feedback systems right now. Within my youth group, within the adult small group ministry networks I've helped congregations across the country develop, we use feedback mechanisms within the small group system so that as people are having small groups, going through their small group sessions, they are able to share ideas with the network of small group leaders and the people directing that spiritual exploration program. What's working, what's not, what are ideas for future sessions? People are invited to develop, share session plans. There's a way to, there's just all this communication happening through the leaders of small groups. And so as we're online, I think it's really important that we develop systems where, whether it's little surveys that we send out periodically via email and other communication channels, whether it's invitations to respond to questions in Zoom event or Zoom worship, the chat bar, that we are building in feedback, like real-time feedback, like week after week. How are things going? What's working? What do we need more of? Maybe we were doing more of this and we've adapted to that, but now we're not getting enough of, say, this fun or fellowship or some of the casual conversation time, or we need more structured, whatever it is. We need to, as we're online, as we're developing these different systems and responding to a world where no one has ever dealt with this before, global pandemic during the digital age. No one ever. We've come to the edge of known experience. And so we have to be in touch, feeding back. And the nice thing about doing the feedback, I know it can be intimidating. Like, ooh, if we offer feedback, somebody might say that they don't like how something's going. That's such a gift. To know that something's not working allows you to adapt. Which brings us to number 6. You have to have an experimental mindset. I think that leadership, I don't say guru, but Michael Hyatt, I've heard him talk about it. It's something that I valued just in the core in my ministry, having an experimental mindset. Right now, everything we're doing is new. things that we're doing probably have to adapt, change. We need to be innovating. We need to be trying new systems, new structures, new models. And the best way to do that, I think, is with your congregation, let everybody know. It's like, hey, we're in uncharted territory. We're having to figure out things that no one's ever dealt with before. So we're going to try X and see how it goes, which is why we have these great feedback mechanisms, right? In the previous point. And so we're going to work on this, try that. It's an experiment. And so we're going to just keep trying and trying. You're not saying, oh, we're gonna do this for the next year. No. Where we are now, we need to be trying things, checking in with people. How's it going? Talking to people in small groups about how it's going. Having listening circles, having visioning meetings, having all kinds of feedback, and checking in on the experiment. Your congregation is an experiment right now. And the different programs and services, communication channels you're using, or how you're communicating, the content you're putting out, it's all an experiment right now. And so you need to bring that experimental mindset front and center and be explicit about your experimenting. And the beauty of that is people might offer feedback and judgment on the experiment, but it won't be as personal. Okay, so the more you can have and share and cultivate the experimental mindset, the better it's going to be for you and everyone, and you're going to be able to adapt. I think, innovate and adapt more effectively. I do think about innovation and adaptation a little differently. I think innovating is a little more proactive, whereas we kind of adapt in response to the world changing around us. I think we have to be really proactive. Not going to follow that line of thought anymore, and just wrap up with number 7. What you're doing has to be exciting. If there isn't a level of excitement in what you're doing, people, all these social media platforms, online entertainment, our devices, everything's trained to give us like these little bits of endorphin and capture our attention and be new and novel and exciting and just like entertain us. And if you don't attain the bar of, ooh, man, it's really exciting what our congregation is doing, the vision, the process, the conversations, the learning, the stories you're telling, if it's not exciting, people's attention is going to bring them elsewhere. And I think that's something that I'm doing more research now on gamification and how do we bring more techniques to congregational life and our ministry online to really raise that level of like curiosity, excitement, buy-in and ownership of what we're doing, and just like really take the excitement to the next level. So that's it. What was our 7 things? Vision casting, which includes storytelling, leading from this like real we place, collaborative, non-hierarchical. Even if you have a staff structure, that's fine, but still your approach, your tone, how you lead is more collaborative. A tribe that's functionally a network of small groups. I've been saying that for 20 plus years. Some of you are on it. Others are like, oh yeah, right. Small groups. Your process, like what's the system that you're using for spiritual exploration, ties into small groups, but also, how do you connect your small group exploration, your worship services, and the content you put online? This is something I talk about in my Video Ministry Academy training, how we can bring the process of spiritual exploration online through content we share through our public social media and engage people online, newcomers, members, friends, in what we're doing, and get them jazzed to participate in the process. So you gotta have that process. Feedback systems, gotta have them. Experimental mindset, and it's all gonna be exciting. Man, now, related to people feeling zoomed out, a lot of stuff that people are leading online right now via Zoom sucks. It's horrible, soul-sucking, just horror show. But you know what? A lot of programs, offerings, talks, classes, etc. were deadly boring before the pandemic. So you put it on Zoom and it's 10 times as boring. All right. So it's no wonder that people are feeling zoomed out if they are having their soul sucked out hour after hour after hour. But that's just like crappy Zoom programming. You can lead awesome, exciting, interactive, participatory, meaningful, life-changing, awesome online programming via Zoom and other platforms, and also offline as we're able to. So when people are like, zoomed out, it's like, well, yeah, they're zoomed out because what they're participating in is horrible. All right. Don't be horrible. All right. But you have to communicate how what you're offering is exciting. I talked to someone the other day. They found out they've been offering stuff for a while, and people say, my people were zoomed out. But in reality, they hadn't even tried the programming that the congregation was offering. They just assumed it would be horrible. So part of your online engagement efforts in storytelling and vision casting needs to include how what you're doing is different, how it's valuable, how it's exciting, and using all that feedback, the feedback channels and communication around that to make people realize, oh wait, this is different. This is awesome. All right. So I'm going to wrap it up there. What I would love is for you to let me know how all that strikes you, because right now I'm working on kind of mapping out how I'm going to be supporting congregations in their digital ministry after the new year. The more I hear from you, the more I can be of service to you, and your questions fuel my work. So let me know what you think, and like which topics in here are there things that you want to hear more about. How can I be of service? So let me know, and I just want to thank you for your questions, especially to the person who shared this question. You know who you are. I'll talk to you soon.